Women in the workplace. The Me Too movement has uncovered abuses, and women still just make 80 cents for every dollar a man makes. The star editor Joanne Lippman joins me to discuss how to even up the power and the pay dynamic between the sexes. Men, women, and work. The relationship among those three has been fraught forever, and the troubles have come to the fore with the Me Too movement. My next guest, Joanne Lippman, worked her way to the top in the male-dominated media field. Her last job was as editor-in-chief of USA Today. And long before the Me Too movement started, Lippman saw a major reason no progress was being made. She's written all about it in a new book called That's What She Said, What Men Need to Know and Women Need to Tell Them About Working Together. I invited her to come tell me what she learned in writing and reporting the book. Joanne Lippman, pleasure to have you on.
Great to be here. Thank you.
So you must have been thinking about this book and writing about it before the Me Too movement. So do you feel as though, did you anticipate some of these things? Did you already sense them because you've been in the working world for decades?
Yes, well, I will tell you. So I started working on the book more than 3 years ago. And the reason is because women have been talking about the issues that we face at work. And I'm talking about things beyond not just the really extremes of sexual abuse, but the issues we face every single day. Things like being marginalized, overlooked, underpaid, simply not given the same level of respect as the guy sitting right next to us. The issue for me was that women talking amongst ourselves, it's half a conversation, and at best gets us to half a solution. And so what we really need to do is to bring men into that conversation. That's the only way we're going to solve for this.
It's just so people can understand, what you're talking about, as you say, is not necessarily physical abuse and such, but a whole series of other kinds of things that are routine and that men don't even often notice, but that women are deeply aware of. Was it your experience when talking to women, and you know, you've gotten to a point where you've run huge organizations with hundreds of thousands of people, even people like you feel that sense of marginalization?
Oh, every woman has felt it. And the research backs this up. So, for example, women are interrupted 3 times more frequently than men. The Northwestern University actually did a study of the Supreme Court of the United States and found that the female Supreme Court justices are interrupted 3 times more frequently than male Supreme Court justices. So this is women at every level. And in fact, there's been research done that looked at the respect gap between men and women. And it found that if you put a man and a woman in exactly the same position, same title and same duties, that the man has more respect, he has more influence over his organization, and he has more power than a woman in exactly the same position.
What works to fix this?
So the good news is there are a variety of things that can be done that, that actually do move the needle. In terms of wages, for example, there are, in the UK, legislation was recently put into effect in which companies have to report the gender wage gap. I think there is some movement here in some areas in the United States to do that, and some companies are doing it voluntarily. Another, you know, there's some very, very simple things that the men who I spoke to gave me some great tips. One of a television executive, for example, instituted a no interruptions rule in meetings for men as well as for women. When someone is pitching an idea, they get to finish. And then, as he said, you can tear them apart afterward, but let them finish. And what that does is it allows women who very often do not get their ideas across in a meeting to actually be heard. There's another thing that happens that very, very common. I always ask when I speak to live groups, I will ask it for a show of hands among the women. How many people have ever had that experience where you say something in a meeting, nobody hears it, it's like crickets, then a man repeats it 2 minutes later and everybody turns to him and they're like, Dave, great idea you had, Dave. And I always ask for a show of hands, and literally it's about 100%. of women who have experienced this. It's so common. But that's another thing, that in meetings, there's the women of the Obama administration actually came up with a concept that they dubbed amplification, which was very effective. Amplification is a woman would say something in a meeting, another woman repeats exactly what she said and gives her credit for it by name, which means that her idea, first of all, doesn't die on the vine, and secondly, that she gets credit for her idea.
You've traveled around the world for the book. It seemed to me like Iceland was your favorite country. Explain why.
So Iceland is the #1 country in the world for gender equality, according to the World Economic Forum. So I traveled to Iceland because I wanted to know, first of all, what does that feel like, right? But what I found in Iceland, what was fascinating to me, was the difference between Iceland and other countries, and really what the most meaningful issue there, I think, is that the men are as likely to see the gender gap as a problem as the women are. It is not seen as a female issue. It is seen as a humanitarian issue. And the men...
You point out that men will very often describe themselves as feminists.
Absolutely. I would sit down with the burliest fishing boat captain, and he would, like, bang the table and say, "Of course I am a feminist," as if to say, of course I'm a human being. There is no political connotation whatsoever to the word feminist. And men as well as women also believe, by the way, that the World Economic Forum is wrong, that they are not equal. And their point is, if we're #1, it just shows you how far we have to go in the rest of the world.
Joanne Lippman, pleasure to have you on.
A pleasure to be here. Thank you.